Coffee Break by Manul. Summary. A few years have passed, and Midoriya Izuku is now famous as Deku, a professional hero and the symbol of peace. But even if it's a dream come true, it is still a stressful job. Could a chance encounter with his former classmate, Asui Tsuyu, now the superheroine Froppy, change that? Deku couldn't say it was a lonely life. In fact, it was a very social one. He was meeting new people every day, whether grateful citizens, quirky fellow heroes, hilarious talking hosts, admiring children, dutiful policemen, or even evil villains. Every day of work was yet another person to get to know. Every rescue another grateful smiling face to smile back. Even if sometimes it was a bit overwhelming for someone who used to be so shy, it was part of being the symbol of peace. Saving people with a smile, always being there for children to look up to, a light in the darkness, so that villains might never extinguish justice. And Deku loved it. He loved every moment of being a hero. It wasn't just his job. He felt it was what he was put in this earth to do. Sure, the rewards and interviews were incredible. The pay was good, and the admirers, and they were very frequent lately. Perhaps because he's been working out? No, that couldn't be. Well, the admirers were a nice perk, but doing good and rescuing people, that was the thing that kept him going. And while the life of the symbol of peace is full of smiling strangers, some friends were always there. Uraraka and Ida worked in the same agency, and they used to go for drinks after work. Not Ida, though. He maintained he had to be sober in the case of any emergency. Uraraka's antics made up for that, though. Though lately work had become heavier, some things happened, and they weren't hanging out as much as he would have liked. However, Deku was happy he still kept in contact with many of his former classmates and teachers, of course. It was unavoidable, being the symbol of peace and all that he would meet other heroes from time to time. And posing with other strong heroes like Bakugo and Todoroki made magazines sell like hotcakes. And he even was trying to warm up to the idea of having sidekicks, though he didn't feel confident enough in his teaching skills yet. Deku still had much to look forward, and so many people depending on him. Yes, being a hero was a good life. Indeed. Though tonight, he just wanted to be anywhere else. It was a clear winter night in southern Tokyo. The weather was cold, of course, and his breath turned into vapor, quickly flown away by the wind high up in the roof of the building he was standing. The height and the wind only made things colder. From there, among the glittering skyline, he could see red and white rivers of light as people drove their cars or took the trains back from work. It was 21:13 p.m. It was dark because of winter, but not too late yet. Many probably were going to cafes, or karaoke bars, or maybe an arcade, or just to hang out in some friend's house. It's been a long time since he did any of that. Lately, patrols were longer, work was harder, and his shoulders were heavy with the burden of being the symbol of peace. The life of a hero was like he thought, one of camaraderie and friendship, but not a very comfy one, and despite public appearances, he was still a very, very shy man, barely used to all the hype and commotion he created wherever he went. He found that, no matter how cute and eager the admirers, spending all day waving and signing autographs to strangers was exhausting. And perhaps that's why he was taking so many night shifts lately. But they were also long, cold, and at the end of the day, the result was the same: going back home and collapse in bed. What was he looking for exactly? A date? A home? A nice meal? A night with friends? Maybe a pet? Really, really good ice cream? He was looking for something. Anything to look forward to when work was over and he was all alone. No, not something. Someone. He used to think he found her, but then, Deku, are you in the Yokohama area? The communicator on his mask blared. It was Ida. Luckily it was off while he was mumbling to himself. Yes, Ingenium, what's happening? They had become used to call themselves by their hero names in the job, and sometimes when drunk. There's a situation on the harbor there. Some smugglers caused a fire to destroy evidence against them. There is a hero trapped, and they need assistance immediately. I'm going. Don't worry. Tell them I'm on the way. I'm sending you the coordinates. Hurry. There's a lot of fuel tanks there, so it might be dangerous. Please be careful, Deku. A softer voice came into the radio. It was Uraraka. To Will. Take care you too, Uravity and Genium. Deku out. Lately, he felt more comfortable calling her by her hero name, but there was no time to think about that right now. He jumped from the building, the whole city moving under his feet in slow motion. While he wasn't able to fly exactly, jumping with such power and falling with such grace was basically the same thing. He watched the coordinates on his communicator, but quickly saw the fire by himself on one of the docks. A dark, rundown place. A couple jumps through the city of Yokohama, and he was near, enough to distinguish that the fire was not in the dock itself, but on the water. He landed on the concrete dock, breaking the floor, and looked around for any sign of the smugglers, or the victim. He decided to keep in the alert for them, but now rescuing the hero was his highest priority. Hello? Where are you? It's fine. I came to rescue you. Over here. The cry came from the water. It was a familiar voice, but she was smarter than this. She couldn't... They sent you, Deku. I guess I should be glad, Ribbit. Froppy? It was then she saw her. She was barely hanging on a floating barrel, and the water around her was an inferno of burning oil, with other barrels floating dangerously close to the flames. A deadly situation. It's hot in here, Deku. She coughed. I can't breathe well. Don't worry, I'm here. Can you use your tongue to grab onto me? I can't. It'll get burned. And I can't jump from this barrel. TC. Think, Deku. Think. Froppy looked very weak, so making her jump was out of the question, and her tongue was also vulnerable. Remembering what he knew about frogs and her quirk, he knew they breathed from the skin too. So the oil, burning or not, was probably making her weaker. So it all depended on him. But what could he do? Should he jump and brave the flames and hope she could resist underwater until they resurfaced? No, he had to put away the fire first. But how? He looked around him and saw a tow iron chain, probably used to hold ships in dock. He hoped Froppy had enough strength to hold on to it. Froppy, catch! He threw it to her, at a fair distance over the fire, knowing it would sink, but hoping she could grab it before it did. Hold into it. She catched it. Done, Midoriya. Why did she didn't call him Deku? No time to think. Can you hold to it? I think I can. Please don't let go. Are you going to pull me through the fire? Just hold on. Midoriya dropped the chain and put himself right in front of the fire. He spread his arms and felt the power of One for All through his body. As he tried to gauge the exact power he would need, he looked at Froppy, almost miserably hanging by the barrel. She was always so powerful, always in control of the situation. What happened to her? His arms reached out as his hands went for something that looked like a huge, exaggerated applause. And then he shouted, "Oklahoma, tornado!" His hands clapped with tremendous force, and a huge gust of wind wiped the cold, dirty waters and put out the oil fires. For just a moment, it was enough. Deku ran to the chain and pulled Froppy closer to the dock. She was still a bit stunned by the sheer force of the wind, but he smiled as she let go the chain and prepared to jump instead. Now this was more like her. Asui was always strong in the face of danger. He wasn't prepared for what came after, though. It only took a moment. She landed. On him. More specifically, her arms wrapped around her neck, and his arms almost reflexively prepared to hold her body, like he did so many times rescuing people. But then he saw the face of his former classmate. Smiling? She always looked a bit expressionless, but he was somewhat used to her subtle changes in tone. So close to his, even after such a life-threatening situation. He was dumbfounded for a second. But any second could mean death on the job of a pro hero. Midoriya, we have to leave now, before this whole place blows up. He thought he was just a fire, but surely his maneuver might have broken a gas conduit or two. Again, no time to lose. He quickly checked if she was injured, and then began to ran and jumped with all the power of One for All, with Asui Tsuyu on his arms. On the roof of a nearby building, Deku waited for the promised explosion that never came, unaware that he was still carrying his froggy colleague. They were both breathing heavily, staring at each other, pausing sometimes to stare at the scene they just left, while trying to catch their breath. I guess old habits die hard, huh? What do you mean? I mean you can put me down now, Deku Ribbit. But thanks. He gasped, his face red as a tomato. Not only was he grabbing her in a rather close position, but she directly reminded him of that time they did the same when they were training in UA. Did she really remember from that long ago? He was amused, but also glad. He tried to gently let her down, but she almost jumped from his arms and stood beside him, grabbing on his shoulder and leaning on him like a crutch, as she coughed a little, her long tongue out. "Are you okay, Asui? Do you want me to take you to a hospital?" She coughed a little more to clear her throat. "I'm fine. You came just in time. A little more, and I would probably have run out of air. Thanks, Deku. By the way..." "Huh? Call me Tsuyu. We've been through this," she said, ironically, not really upset at him. He was a little shocked at how nonchalant she was on such a situation, but he was glad she was fine. She still panted a little, her tongue still out. Deku luckily always had a water bottle with him. Listening to Mom's tips, even if he was a superhero, always had its advantages. He handed it to her. "Here you go. You probably need it." "Thank you. Just what I needed, Deku." She drank almost all it. He didn't mind. "So, what happened out there?" "I was sleepy." "Huh? Cold weather makes me sleepy. I don't work well on it. Must be something to do with my quirk. I hate winter, Ribbit." Her last ribbit became a yawn. He did remember how much she hated going to school in winter, and how her grades were the worst in the winter exams, even if she was such a good student the rest of the year. "Yeah, but I mean, the fire, and the water, and you were there, and the smugglers. Oh, those shouldn't have been a problem. You see, me and my hero agency have been trying to stop them for months. We tracked them to these docks tonight, and I thought I would stalk them underwater, alone, so it wouldn't raise suspicions. And it was cold, and I fell asleep." "And then what?" She left Deku's shoulder, standing by herself, stretching a little. He tried not to stare, but somehow found it difficult, and then sitting on a ventilation shaft on the roof, next to him, she sighed, dejectedly. "They seemed to be waiting for me, and they threw oil on the water and set it on fire while I was asleep. I tried to jump away, but I was cold, and then the fire started to asphyxiate me." Midoriya gulped as she calmly talked about her brush with death. "So I decided to call for backup, and then you showed up. The smugglers escaped away, I think." From the roof, they could see firefighters and police already arriving at the scene. "WWE could try to catch them, if you want. They've probably gotten away, and I think I had enough for tonight. But thanks, Midoriya. I never guessed I would be saved by the symbol of peace, Ribbit. My coworkers are going to be so jealous. I'm going to tell them I'm okay," she said, while writing on her communicator. "Well, just another day on the job. I'm glad I could help," Deku said, a bit more relaxed, scratching his head. "So, how have you been?" Froppy said, looking up from her communicator and making eye contact with him. He looked away a little. but couldn't avoid her big eyes. I think I haven't seen you since that charity event a couple months ago. You've been busy, surely. Ribbit? He blushed. He certainly didn't expect such a casual conversation after such a situation, but she has always been nonchalant like that. He wasn't sure why he was so nervous, actually. He and Asui. Oh, that's right. She wanted to be called Tsuyu. Were rather close friends, even if they seldom saw each other. They often spent nights messaging each other about everything from superhero tactics, job rumors, their families, new TV shows, and home recipes. She always seemed to start messaging him, often teasing him about his dorky smile on a new magazine cover, or the antics of some fan. And since she liked a strong drink after work, Tsuyu was the perfect complement to after-work drinks. When she was not busy at her own agency, spending time with her was very fun, and working with such a level-headed, intelligent partner was a pleasure, even with her blunt comments. In fact, he missed her a little. And, yes, they haven't talked in a while. Froppy knew he broke up with Uraraka a short time ago. They talked about it, barely, though perhaps she didn't know that was one of the reasons he was so aloof lately, so he decided just to avoid that subject. Well, you know, just working hard. I've been taking night patrols more often lately. The night air does me good. Really? You're a weird one, Deku. I can barely stand this cold. I think I'll avoid them for a while, Ribbit. It's not my best environment, really. You still were pretty strong back there. Like always. I'm sure those smugglers wouldn't have stood a chance if you didn't fell asleep. I would have called for backup anyways. Most likely you would have arrived, since you were in the neighborhood. Hey, wouldn't that have been fun? You and me, fighting for justice. Just like the old days. Midoriya smiled. Old days? Really? She talked as she was some kind of retiree hero. Better than tonight, sure. I've had worse missions, Midoriya. We were classmates, remember? Hey, what are you saying? Is that supposed to be a bad thing? You were one of the nicest things on high school, actually. Ribbit! But we had some rough battles then, didn't we? We did. I'm glad I had such good classmates by my side, though. I'm glad I still have them, though I guess being the symbol of peace is too busy of a job to send a text once in a while. Tsuyu smiled playfully, with a finger on her chin. Oh, hey, I've been busy with that villain that is stalking people in Tokyo, and that gang that is kidnapping people in Osaka, and those interviews and photo shoots, and that time I rescued a dog from a fire, and then... I know, Deku. I follow you on the internet. It's actually kind of hard to avoid hearing about you, since you're so famous and all. Is that so? Yes, Ribbit. But don't worry. Your stories are interesting enough, so I don't mind. You're an awesome hero too, Froppy, he said, a little too excitedly. Each time I see you in the news, I'm so proud of you. You're awesome. I've always knew you'll be one of the strongest heroes. Like that time there were floods after the typhoon, and yet you still went on those houses and... Ribbit Froppy croaked quietly while shivering, as cold wind picked up. Are you sure you're okay? Yes, I'm just cold and sleepy. Rooftops aren't very comfortable. Well, maybe for a bunny-hopping hero like you, she said playfully, her tongue out. He smiled. His costume really made him look like a green bunny sometimes, and she never lost a chance to tease him about that. Yeah, we could go for a coffee somewhere warm, he said, looking at her. It wasn't unheard of for heroes to go for drinks, coffee, ice cream, or even a date after a mission. In fact, it was almost a tradition. While Tsuyu was a bit surprised at the suggestion after such a hectic night, it didn't seem like nothing unusual. In fact, it was a rather pleasant proposition. But Midoriya choked a little after realizing what he just said. He didn't even know why did he bring that up. Really? Coffee? After rescuing her from an almost certain fiery death? She probably just wants to go home and recover. And you're bothering her with that? I know, right? she said. "I've thought about that all night. Most people are probably coming home from their jobs, or going to karaoke bars or cafes or something. Meanwhile, we heroes are just starting our shifts." She was thinking the exact same thing he was earlier. "So, I know. But that's how our job goes, right?" She stood up and stretched her arms, and her whole body with them, down to her feet. Her long hair, dark and wet, traveled all the way down to her back. Tsuyu was a short woman, and her usually hunched stance accentuated that. But when she stretched, her strong, muscular form became very apparent. Her arms and legs were thick and well-toned, from a life of jumping and landing. She wasn't very thin, and in fact was a little pudgy on some parts, as her skin-tight suit showed, but everyone who paid attention could notice the body of a woman trained to be a hero first and foremost. Deku was probably paying too much attention. "Man, I would love to drink a coffee somewhere, Ribbit," Froppy said as he turned to Deku. "It's a shame that I smell like fish and burned oil. I don't think any place will let me enter, not even with the symbol of peace with me. Well, I have an espresso machine in my house. Oh God, Deku, what did you just said? What the hell will do you even think before you speak? Oh God, why?" Tsuyu stared at him for a moment. "And you know how to use it?" "Well, I don't use it often since I'm almost never home, and it's one of those foreign machines, and I haven't read the instruction manual yet. But I do have coffee and cappuccino and other things to make it, and I once made it for myself and it tasted good." "Good enough for me. Ribbit, I never went to your house now that I remember. Is it far from here?" "No, it isn't," he said, blushing like crazy. Now that he noticed, Tsuyu was blushing a little too. "We could take a taxi, but I don't think I have money." Midoriya was almost frozen, but he had to answer something. Anything. "I can carry you there." Well, that was something. "You can," she answered matter-of-factly, as she looked intently at the big man in front of her. "All of him. Well, shall we go then?" Deku saw no coherent reason to say no to that, so he just nodded, surprised that his head let him do it at all. Tsuyu came closer and put her arms around his neck. Her stare was very intense, but she looked away as he carried her, blushing even more. She held a little more tightly to him, a situation he tried to ignore as best as he could. They looked away from each other silently, and Deku began to run and jump again. "Look, here we go," he said, to nobody in particular, as he jumped from building to building in the Tokyo night. They reached his home quickly, only stopping for a little when Tsuyu asked if she could use his shower. Deku almost fell from a building. Midoriya Izuku Deku, the Hash One. Hiro and Symbol of Peace rented a 2-story penthouse in the suburbs of Tokyo, but he rarely lived there, busy as he was. It was a nice modern place. Expensive, sure, but he didn't want anything ostentatious. Just a place to sleep and sometimes watch TV with friends and be near his mom and his hero agency. Sometimes he thought it was too much for someone like him, but Uraraka used to insist it was an awesome place, and he totally deserved to have it. He sighed. Better not to think much about that. He already had changed into a comfy shirt and pants while struggling with the coffee machine. Last time he actually used it, it was with Uraraka, and between the both of them, they were barely able to make a cup of cappuccino. Now that he read the instructions more closely, it wasn't that hard to figure it out. He decided to focus on that instead, on the fact that a girl, and more accurately, Asui Tsuyu, was taking a shower on his house. The water started to heat up as he looked through the fridge in search of some biscuits or something to eat with it. He already told Uraraka and Ida the mission was accomplished, and he would take a break for the night. They didn't talk about Tsuyu, though. "This shower is awesome," he heard an echoed voice from upstairs. "So many settings, Ribbit. And the water is so warm, Tilda. Yeah, it's cool, isn't it?" I said warm, Midoriya, but I get it. "Ha, nice one there, Tsuyu." He laughed nervously, As he searched for some fancy plates to put the flavored toast, why did he even buy that? Never mind. He had a guest, and guest deserved fancy plates and flavored toast. As he was looking for some jam or something to spread over it, he heard the bathroom door unlock. He glanced a little upstairs to see. Luckily, Tsuyu was already dry and dressed. She was borrowing some of Midoriya's old clothes, an old long-sleeved shirt and baggy exercise pants. They were big for her. But then again, Deku was big. Not as big as All Might ever was, but he certainly could be called a wall of justice. Her long, dark greenish hair was precariously contained in a towel, and she was barefoot. That was a good shower ribbit. I need something like that in my home. She walked down the stairs, smiling, trying to adjust the towel on her head, looking around the house. Deku stared a little at her, and then returned to search for some sugar for the coffee, trying to hide his blushing face. "It's really good, isn't it? I'm never home, so I can't use it often, though." "You look good for someone who doesn't bathe, then." "Haha, stop it," he said nervously. With a weird feeling, something flew over his head. "You know I bathe often." "Actually, I don't. I can only speculate." Deku let a barely audible gasp. He felt like somebody slipped ice cubes on his back. "So, I'll put some music while we wait for the coffee," he said as he looked for the remote. He pressed a couple buttons that sort of looked as if they would play music. It had been a long time since he used it. A soft saxophone filled the air. "It's jazz, Midoriya. I never knew you were so cultured." "Yeah, you know," he said while scratching his head. "To just love those classic tunes." He would have preferred some rock, actually. Tsuyu sat down on one of the sofas near the fireplace. It wasn't turned on. It was a gas-powered one, but it was still a nice place to sit down. The sofa was big, red and comfy, though maybe too big. She felt tiny sitting on it. Tsuyu looked around the house, though she didn't want to be too nosy, at the huge windows to the Tokyo skyline and the modernist furniture. "You've got a nice place here, Midoriya. I'm sure your fans love it." "Me fans?" Midoriya asked confusedly. "You have a lot of fans, symbol of peace. Surely someone has asked you for a tour of your house." Was she really implying? "No, nobody ever comes here, in fact. Just my friends. Sometimes. I never brought a fan over, unless my friends count as fans, which makes sense, since I'm also a fan of them. But I don't think I ever brought a fan here. And I'm not sure it would be appropriate to do so. I mean, if they really wanted to, and there was no problem with them, I think I could, but I'm not sure if I would be comfortable with it. Giving a tour of the house, I mean." Tsuyu was blushing, though he didn't know why. To be honest, she wasn't sure either. See, I was just teasing. I know you're not into heroism for that kind of thing." "Ribbit. At least I'm not either. Though I know some people who are." Mineta. Now that I remember, last time I met him, he did ask me to send some cute fans his way." "Really? I'm so glad I don't work with him. He never changes, does he?" "Nope. He also said I should enjoy all the fans I got for once, and that I was wasting my potential as a chick magnet." Tsuyu laughed in her own cute way, a short burst of small croaks. It was a weird laugh, sure, but very pleasant. Midoriya didn't even know how did they reach this conversation theme, and though he did enjoy hearing Tsuyu laugh, and hasn't heard it in a long time, he felt a little embarrassed, like she was making fun of him. "Hey, I'm just repeating what he said." I know, Ribbit. Ribbit!" She croaked between laughs. It's just so hilariously immature the way he put it. Chick magnet. It's like something a 12-year-old would say. Ha ha ha, I'm not sure he actually isn't one. He might have a point in a way, though. Huh. Ding. Oh, coffee's ready. Deku quickly stood up and went to serve it. Froppy stayed on her seat. She played with her hair a little, rearranging it under her towel. It still felt a little cold, though the shower and the heating did help, She was cold-blooded after all. She needed something to warm herself. But maybe she was looking for warmth in the wrong place. Hey, Izuku? Yes? She called him Izuku? Never mind. She did want to be called Tsuyu, right? Where I can leave this towel. Huh. Just put it over that chair. I'll clean up tomorrow. She threw the wet towel on the chair, unceremoniously. Her long, silky hair was spread over her back, a bit messy and wet yet, but still soft. Izuku stared at her a little. She looked, frankly, beautiful. Even if she was wearing his old clothes. He started asking himself if he ever noticed that before. Here you go. Izuku brought a pot of coffee, a plate with toast, sugar, and other sweet things, and 2 cups that looked more fit for an elegant Victorian tea ceremony than for a night of coffee between friends. But hey, she wasn't gonna complain. Hey, Izuku, what's up with the dog you saved last time? Was it famous or something? Because I see it everywhere, on your memes. Of course heroes had memes of their own. Deku's weren't even the best. Oh, it's a fun story. You had to be there. He smiled and sat down in the couch in front of her. You see, apparently there was a burning media studio in... She listened intently as she sipped the long-awaited coffee. It wasn't very professional, but it was warm, and that's what mattered. Izuku now felt much more comfortable. It's not like he loved talking about himself, but talking about heroic antics with a fellow hero and friend was something he really appreciated. And talking to Tsuyu was always fun. And they talked. They talked about how annoying was the latest hero agency paperwork, the new heroes in training, and how much they had to learn from them old-timers still. All Might's, and lately Deku's, tendency to call moves for U.S. states, possible alternatives, including Japanese prefectures, bird names or movie stars, the upcoming elections, Tsuyu's plan to move to a new house, with a pond, of course, and how her family was doing, the merits of eating ice cream in winter, memes, lots of them, UFOs supposedly flying around in night patrols, and basically everything that crossed their minds at the time and was good for a laugh. And of course, that included gossiping about their former classmates. You saw them too. Yes, Ribbit. I couldn't stop laughing. It's unbelievable. A line of jeans based on Bakugo. Can you imagine how mad he was? And the tagline, hot to wear. Are they explosive jeans? Should I be worried? A product sponsored by Mr. Explody McExplosion doesn't exactly fill me with confidence. Froppy was almost in the floor, laughing, her long tongue out and her squeaky voice interrupted by chuckles. It was not the first time in the night she did that. In fact, as the night went on, they laughed more and more. Midoriya looked at her, chuckling too. She was really rocking his old shirt. Mr. Explody McExplosion, she said between laughs. It wasn't even a good joke, but that made it more fun. You're terrible, Izuku. He totally deserves it, though. Poor Bakugo, though. Can you imagine him posing for those photos? I'd rather not. He chuckled. Tsuyu wiped a tear from her face. Man, I haven't had this fun on a night shift for a long time. He said, Me either, Ribbit. I'm so glad I rescued you. I mean, it was an awful situation, but I've missed hanging out with you a lot. You're a good friend, Tsuyu. She smiled and played a little with her hair, looking at the carpeted floor. You too, Izuku. I missed you a lot too. And I'm glad you're finally calling me by name, Ribbit. It's no problem. He suddenly remembered something. Hey, do you think we appeared on the news tonight? The news? I don't think so. Those docks were deserted, and we left before anyone showed up. You might be right, but let's see. Anyways, now, where did I put the remote? It was at this point that Tsuyu noticed Midoriya had a huge TV. Did he really loved seeing himself in TV that much? And then she looked down and saw what were like 3 different game consoles on the floor, with at least 2 copies of Pro Hero Rescue and other games she somewhat knew, most featuring All Might. It was, in fact, one of the few places in the house that were messy. She guessed heroic life was boring and tedious enough sometimes to escape to the exciting world of video games, where you could do things like save people and stuff. He was such a dork, she thought. Damn it, I found it. He came back and sat down right next to her. That was a little unexpected, she thought, but very welcome. Let's see what's on the news then. Deku was zapping through the channels, looking for news about the fire. TV on Friday nights was boring. The news only showed dull election reporting. The rest of the channels only had weird game shows or documentaries. He was saying something, probably about something in TV, but she couldn't concentrate. He was so close, and she felt so warm inside. It wasn't just the house or the coffee. It was him. The coffee was already cold, and it was late. Tsuyu hoped he didn't notice. She didn't want to leave. She leaned against his shoulder. Her arm rubbed against his. She didn't feel sleepy right now. Deku felt her and sweated a little. It wasn't unpleasant, but it was unexpected. He looked at her, her eyes half closed, a small smile on her lips. He was going to ask if she was all right, but she definitively seemed fine. Froppy found him staring at her. She closed her eyes and smiled at him. I'm just getting comfy. Don't mind me. She cuddled herself on Izuku's arm. Her hand was just next to his. She croaked quietly, almost like a purr. Izuku thought it was one of the cutest sounds he ever heard. A lot of things were happening on his head right now. The soft jazz piano kept playing over the incomprehensible ruckus of the game show. The volume was so low they might have as well not been there. They eventually blurred into a white noise, and his mind followed. He tuned to a news channel. The time was there, on a corner of the screen. It was late. Very late. But he, for some reason, didn't care. There was a reason, actually. He just didn't know who she was yet. Man, I'm glad I can sleep up late tomorrow, he said, interrupting the long silence. Midoriya, you really are a gentleman, aren't you? Clearly she was thinking something else. Huh, a gentleman. I mean, when you asked me for coffee, in your house no less, I thought, you wouldn't lose any time. You've certainly become bold now that you're single. Deku was frozen in place. Did she really think he invited her here for that? And she would have been okay with it anyways. But you are still all sweet and cute and shy, like when we first met. I like that. Ribbit. But maybe you don't like me that much. His breath accelerated, and he drifted apart a little. This was a lot to unpack all of a sudden. Oh, two. Well, I just invited you to chat. Nothing else. Just to chat? Yeah. We are friends, but we haven't kept touch in a while, and I really missed you. He was gasping for a little air as he tried to explain. Two didn't want to do anything else to you. Sorry if you misunderstood it like that. I didn't mean to offend you or make you uncomfortable. Why would I be uncomfortable? Well, you're alone in the house of a guy, and two, she said softly, almost whispering. Midoriya, you do realize I've been flirting with you all night, right? He smiled at her blankly. His right eye twitched a little. Now Midoriya Izuku was many things. He was shy, awkward, dorky, anxious, unsure, and he had a long list of other social issues. But he was not dumb. The thought of her flirting with him did cross his mind multiple times. But somehow, he just did not consider it seriously. After all, they were friends for years. Only some jerk like Mineta would think of taking advantage of a longtime friend on his own home. But the honest truth is, that was the kind of guy that needed to be explicitly told with graphics and statistics when someone was flirting with him. Ooh, wait. Now that he rewinded what happened today, she wasn't being subtle at all tonight. Was she so unpleasant to be around that he didn't even consider it? Only by looking at her, he could tell she was very, very pleasant to be with. Was she boring? Or treated him bad? Not at all. In fact, he hadn't had this fun in a long time. Why did he not make a move then? Oh, right. He did invite her to his house. He supposed that counted. But he still couldn't believe she really was flirting with him. Her big, sweet eyes were fixated on him. She wanted an answer. She did think you might have been flirting. A couple of times. Glad you noticed, she said in a monotone voice. But I'm bad at picking up signals and, well, why? Why? Do you like me that much? Yes, I do. I like you a lot. I like how kind you are. I like how you always push yourself to do greater things. I like your dorkiness. I like how it's never boring to talk to you. I like how you're always planning ahead and noticing small details. Though you failed me on that tonight. Haha, yeah. And I like how messy and green your hair is. Green is a nice color. And you've working out a lot since we ended high school, haven't you? Don't you think I haven't noticed? Ribbit Tilda. He stayed silent, almost frozen, with a very nervous expression. In fact, he was a little pale. Froppy was a bit worried she might have broken him, but she awaited his answer. I'm flattered. He finally said, But, what? There's no but. You don't like me? Midoriya gulped. He could no longer deny it. I do like you, Tsuyu. This is just so sudden. See, maybe it's a bad time, she said faintly. I just started flirting with you out of nowhere and I didn't even know how you felt. Maybe you have someone else? We haven't kept in touch in a while. So, Uraraka. But it was so long ago. I don't. I had someone, but not today. It's not like that. It's just, you're cute and fun and a good friend and a powerful hero and I do like you, but this is confusing. Why? He couldn't shake their earlier conversation out of his head. What were you expecting to happen, Tsuyu? Tonight, I mean. She frowned a little and then looked away to the floor, unsure. This wasn't the perfect date with him she sometimes daydreamed, under a starry sky or near a peaceful lake. What if it didn't work out? I'm not sure. Please, tell me. I wish I could be clear-headed right now, like most of the time, but I'm not sure how to answer that. Maybe it's best if I go. Wait! He grabbed her hand. It was bigger than his, but still so soft. She wasn't really intent on leaving after all. Can you stay and chat, please? Just chat? Okay. How long have you liked me? I had a crush on you in high school. I thought I grew out of it. But every time we saw each other, I still had that little feeling inside. Ribbit. I dated other people, of course, and I knew you were dating Ochako, so I didn't want to interfere, but I've always liked you a little bit still. I guess it's silly. It's not. And I also thought you were very cute in high school. And how about now? He looked at her hands. They were big, but still cute, hidden inside the sleeves of his old shirt. Froppy's face was expressionless for some, but he knew her eyes were very expressive and intense on her own way. But it was her smile, definitively, the best part of her. Those little lips and her tongue half-dangling. Her head was tilted a little, just to intensify the cuteness. No doubt she did it on purpose. Oh God, she was cute. Even more. Ribbit! Her tongue darted to his cheek, kissing it. He gasped. But she saw her cute smile after that, and how she was blushing too, and couldn't do anything else but laugh softly. She slid her hand toward his and he grabbed it. He did not even hesitate. It was warmer than he expected, and her whole body was turning red. They were looking away from each other, but still couldn't think or nothing else. He finally turned and faced her. Izuku was thinking of what to say, or rather, what to do. But when he looked at her, she stopped smiling. Can I ask you something, though? Yes, it's only fair. Your turn? Do you still love Ochako? Well, she's still my friend, and my coworker, so I still appreciate her a lot. And sometimes I miss her a lot. We had many good moments, but I'm not sure if I love her anymore. But you were thinking about her tonight, weren't you? A little. I see. But I don't think I want to go back with her. You don't? She said we couldn't be together because our jobs came first. I love being a hero, but I do this not only for myself, but for the people I love too. Otherwise, there's no point. And while I know she loved me, she chose something else, and I respect that choice, but it still hurt. I wanted somebody to be at my side, and I think she failed me. I know it sounds selfish, but I miss her. I mean, as my girlfriend. I see her all the time, and we're very good friends, but I miss the good times we had together. The two of us, which is sort of missing her, but I think it's more of my loneliness than anything else. I'm not sure if I'm making any sense. You are, but you are mumbling again. Yeah, he said, resigned. I didn't mean it like that. Sorry, you have a lot in your head. I understand. You two made a good couple. I didn't want to dig up bad memories. I was just curious because I wasn't sure if you were considering seeing anyone else. He looked away. His answer was barely audible. I wasn't until now. Deku felt her hand softly gripping his. He slowly caressed her thumb, then her palms. Deku's hands and arms were full of battle scars from the days he couldn't control One for All, and they didn't felt exactly soft, but they were warm and caring. Tsuyu's, meanwhile, felt cold and soft, but her smile filled the room with brightness. When she looked at him, he stared away. Her gaze was very strong. He was now sitting towards her in the large sofa. So she just slowly slid towards him, almost crawling in the sofa, not letting his hand go. She was coming close and up front, her face just inches away from his, both blushing like crazy. His palms were sweating but still holding her hand. She could feel his breath on her face, but he wasn't coming closer. Tsuyu, I need to ask you something now. Can I be blunt? I prefer it if you are, she said, a little disappointed, but she wanted things to be clear too. It was better to be patient. Then, do you intend for this to be a more permanent thing, or, do you want us to be, I just confessed to you, Deku? Her answer was sharp and immediate. She hoped it didn't come out wrong. I want to be with you. I want to date you, but, to be honest, until now, I wasn't sure what to expect. Did you think I'm the kind of guy who uses girls like that? No, or else I wouldn't even consider it. I thought I would get rejected. What? I've never had too much luck with these sort of things. Ribbit. I have admirers, but getting to know the right person has been impossible. With all the work and events and paperwork and patrols, I barely have time for myself. I haven't had time even for my family, Ribbit, and it hurts. Forget about dating, or anything else, really, and it's been lonely. Same here. I never would have guessed you felt the same, since we both were so busy. So when you invited me here, I thought, why not? I've always had a crush on you. Maybe I can be a little flirty. Why not try at least to have a shot with my friend, who, by the way, has become totally sexy lately? Tu actually didn't intend to go to this far. I just wanted to ask you in a date or something. But you make me feel... I know! It's confusing. You don't want that in your life right now. I know I'm not the prettiest or most feminine hero out there, so I didn't think I had that much of a chance. What? Izuku felt like an arrow penetrated his chest. How dare her think that? That last part is completely untrue. You're awesome, and funny, and thoughtful, and smart, and you're so cute. That's not confusing at all, that's the truth. And I definitively want you in my life. Izuku, I'm flattered, but you're mumbling again. You aren't making your point clear. She was smiling. To keep talking would be pointless. He was still holding her right hand. It felt almost natural at this point. His other hand was free. He caressed her hair as she looked up to him. Then his hand traveled down to her cheek. She closed her eyes and breathed heavier as Midoriya became close again, and his hand went to her shoulder, caressing it. She could tell he was still a little nervous from the little twitching he did while holding her hand. Somehow this made her feel a bit more comfortable. She didn't expect it when he smoothly grabbed her by the waist and finally pulled her closer to his smile. Now that was nice, although she did almost fall off the sofa. She just let his hands guide her and closed her eyes. And finally, he completed the distance by kissing her. Midoriya felt all his nervousness melt away on the warm sensation of Tsuyu's hand, caressing his hair and her smooth, wet lips playing with his. He felt every single breath of hers with his eyes closed. The initial deep breath she took, almost a gasp, when their lips met. The gentler, smaller ones as she caressed her hair and rubbed his palm over his hand. And the deep one when they broke the kiss. It wasn't a long kiss, actually. Maybe not even the most romantic one. But it felt like a shower of rain in a hot day. It washed away all the awkwardness of the night, all those friendly smiles that always meant something more, the words unsaid for so long. Now, right now, they were just the two of them, alone, loving. Yes, that was the word, each other, and that was the only thing that mattered. They opened their eyes. Tsuyu opened hers first. Maybe she wanted to know it really was happening. He looked at Izuku totally flustered, sweating, trembling a little, with a dumb smile on his face, but looking lovingly at her. He might have become a man and a superhero and all that, but he remained in many ways the same dorky boy she had a crush on so long ago. Oh, and now he kissed her. How cool was that? They looked at each other, lost into each other's smiles. That's a little clearer, she finally said. You're so beautiful, Froppy. I love you. Ribbit. She looked away bashfully after hearing that. Midoriya didn't know what to do. Maybe it was too much. I love you too, Ribbit. But you know, Deku, yeah. I always say what's on my mind, but right now my mind is a little blank. So, right now, I'll rather do what I have on my mind. Huh? Ribbit. She jumped over him. Deku fell on his back on the sofa, luckily hitting his head against a decorative pillow, and he thought those things were useless. Her hands were on his sides, her body stretched on top of him. Tsuyu looked down to him with an undecipherable smile, her tongue out, dangling, her eyes half closed. Her long hair fell over his head like a curtain, and he could feel it tickling his face. She smelled like his shampoo, which made sense. It was a good smell, though. Tsuyu shoot her tongue against his lips, and then kissed him. She fell over him. One hand slowly caressed Deku's chest and the other his hair. He was still trembling a little, but Tsuyu's hands felt so soft. His hands slowly wandered from her arms to her back, which made her twitch a little. Deku reached her hips and pulled her towards him, a little more shamelessly than she, or him, expected. She gasped a little happily. The frog girl paused a little to look at him. He tried to avoid looking at her directly, but he was totally enjoying it. As she came down to kiss him again, Izuku tried to say something, but his voice was muffled. Her long hair became tangled on Izuku's face and mouth. Sorry, Tsuyu said, embarrassed, as she stood up, but her legs were still all over him, and tried to tidy up her hair into an improvised ponytail. Deku couldn't help but notice that the shirt she was wearing, his shirt, while big, was very loose, and didn't leave much to the imagination. While he couldn't help to feel a little embarrassed, still, he was starting to really appreciate the situation he was in. "What are you staring at?" she teased. "You are so hot." Now that was being clear. "Come here," he said suddenly. She obliged, his hands now firmly on her hips, wandering back and forth all over her body. They kept kissing, but they were a lot more playful now. And with Froppy's tongue, there was a lot to play with indeed. They panted a little as their kisses became more paused, but longer, and started to let their minds and hands wander a little, even if they were taking things slow yet. It was a bit noisy, awkward, and messy, but they didn't mind. Froppy liked when he was bold, and not only as a hero. To be honest, she was a little frustrated at how slow he was earlier. She was glad he started to take a little more initiative. She knew he was shy, but damn it, she was shy too. But right now, it didn't matter. At all. They were so close to each other. Meanwhile, Deku's mind was almost a complete blank, only focusing on Tsuyu. Her smile, her kisses, yes, her body too. But even then, he couldn't help but notice something. "MidoTsuyu," he said in the middle of a kiss. No response but a contented sigh, and yet another kiss. He tried again. "MidoTsuyu, you're so cute, Tilda," she said, whispering. "Froppy." "What?" "We're going to—" His arm and his head were precariously hanging on the border of the sofa. Then Tsuyu kissed him again, pushing both of them to the carpeted floor in an ungraceful fall. The bump hurt a little, but they couldn't help but laugh. They laughed together as Izuku lifted her again, and they laid down again in the sofa, facing each other, giggling like crazy, tears on their eyes. After a while, they stopped to catch their breaths, still smiling and panting. So, they rolled over together until Tsuyu was once again on top of him, now positioned a bit more carefully so that it wouldn't happen again, fun as it was. She made herself comfortable again, climbing over him until they faced each other. And then, Izuku kissed her forehead. She felt a warm feeling all over her. Tsuyu returned it by kissing his cheek with her tongue again, and let out a very soft sigh as she rested her head over his chest. They closed their eyes together as they recovered their breath. The entire world, with all its dramas, stopped for a moment, just for the two of them. "You know, my area has been very quiet lately, and my hero agency isn't too far from yours. Maybe we could meet more often after the night patrols," he said, whispering, as he caressed her head. "Of course we should. Just call me. And I was thinking we should have dinner sometime too, or maybe go to that new amusement park." She smiled and twitched a little as she got more comfortable, hugging him closer. "It's been way too long since I've had a date like that," she answered tenderly, her eyes closed, rubbing her head on Izuku's chest and neck. "I would love it. Ribbit?" "Me too. Next week, for sure." "Good." They stayed like that for an eternal moment, Deku spread on the sofa, and Froppy using him as a pillow. "Hey, Deku, are you tired?" Not really," he said. He could see a mischievous smile. "Why?" "Because I haven't seen your bedroom yet."